Youth Skills Day. Just a little bit of background: in 2014, the United General Assembly, declared the 15th of July as World Youth Skills Day to celebrate the importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. This has created a wonderful opportunity for us to invite one of our members and a founder and CEO of YEmpower Australia, Ness Song. So a warm welcome, Ness. Given it's club members here today, I'm sure many of you know Ness's background, but I'll just share a few highlights here, as she is a social entrepreneur and community builder with a lot of passion for connecting young Australians with the opportunities that they need in order to grow and thrive. Ness has spent the last 5 years of her career working with young Australians, and this all came around after starting her professional career while looking for mentorship and guidance, to no avail, unfortunately. So she began to think about those experiences and what caused them, and ultimately that led her to found YEmpower in early 2020. Now, just a little bit of statistics and background here. 1 in 3 young Australians are unemployed or underemployed. And youth unemployment's actually soared to 16.1%. And so when I first read that, I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. You know, COVID, cafes have closed, early starts to careers have been a little bit harder. But in fact, youth unemployment before the pandemic was more than double the national unemployment rate. And so Ness has acknowledged this and is taking action. YEmpower Australia is a youth mentoring advocacy service, and it's geared towards young people aged 17 to 27. Their mission is to connect young people with the knowledge, opportunities, and community they need to succeed and build the resilience that unprecedented times, that we're currently in, are calling for. In Ness's business, they've created a community in which young Australians can cultivate their ideas, share resources and skills, and really connect with other people in their network. So this can include mentors who may commit to pulling each other through and cultivating a more empathy-driven Australia when it comes to looking at our youth. And Ness, we're really excited to hear from you. And I'm also curious if you happen to know in those numbers, if it's equal between men and women in that, if you're able to share any of that with us this morning. So at this time, though, I'll hand over to you, Ness. Again, a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like you definitely covered a lot of what I was going to say about myself, but I can always remember myself, that's fine.
I like to do a very thorough introduction.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you. It was really good for me, I think, to hear a lot of that information, because a lot of that information I think we wrote as well when we were first starting out. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we've evolved in the meantime as well. But I really want to say thank you for inviting me to come and speak today. I think it's really important that young people do have spaces where they do feel comfortable to come and talk, and this is one of those for me. I like seeing your beautiful faces so early in the morning, so thank you for joining me today. I want to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the land of the Dark and Young people on the Central Coast, so I pay my respects to those elders past and present. Yes, so we are YEmpower. We're a group of young people who decided to put together an organisation to help other young people. We want to help young people by empowering them to create lives for themselves that are fulfilling, because that's something that we really didn't see as an option for ourselves at the time when we started YEmpower. We were like, we're probably going to have to get into jobs that we don't really like, and then keep doing them for the rest of our lives. And it was kind of really difficult to find any resources that pointed us in the right direction. So once we realized there was a bit of a gap, we all kind of put our heads together, and it was just at the peak lockdown period as well. So we wrote all of these frameworks and modules for engagement and understanding between each other. And that was the basis of our organisation. So we're really proud to be able to still have those today. They're on our website, you can check them out, but they're just terms of engagement and ideas around what it is that we're actually here to create. So it's constantly changing. In 2020, we started with a focus on things like job readiness and financial literacy, which I feel like provided us with a really good base ground for building upon how to engage in community in a meaningful way. 2021 kind of saw us engage in how to connect with each other in a way that is respectful and honoring of each person in those situations. So we had workshops like boundaries and consent education, things like that. And then this year, we're kind of drawing more inwards, but also outwards with a focus on how to engage with ourselves in a way that is honoring of ourselves, and also how to engage with our natural environment in a way that really fosters that connection between self and the natural world, because I think sometimes we feel apart from it rather than a part of it. Yeah, and this year, I don't know, there's just so much exciting stuff happening at the moment. We have creative expression workshops happening, so teaching young people how to really put out into the world things that live in their mind and in their hearts, creating that, because I think as humans, one of the things that we're really, really proud to be able to do is to engage in the act of creation. We all have a different method of creating. So it's helping young people discover that, and also young and old, because I feel like so many people feel underutilized in their capacity for creation. So it's about putting that power back in the hands of people and being like, hey, you have the power, the time, if you create it, to create. Yeah, I get really excited about that. But also resiliency building, which is, I think, very important in these very unprecedented times post-pandemic. And we're currently engaging more with the natural world through bushwalks, and also with each other through our Skillshare network, which I'll chat a little bit about later. So this is a little slide that I put together about myself, because I was like, I feel like I wear so many different hats. YEmpower is one of those hats, but I also like to sing, I like to paint and write, and I'm also a chef. And yeah, I feel like I came to this planet to be joyful. So I think that's the takeaway from this slide, because I feel like you've already said a lot about my experiences. But I do want to note that like the journey of YEmpower is very closely linked to my own personal journey as well. So through the ebbs and flows and crests and things, it started because I realized a very serious gap. And as I continued to get deeper into the gap, I realized there were so many bigger problems as well that were underpinning the existing gaps that kind of exist on a surface level. So we see unemployment, but we don't see youth loneliness. We see financial literacy levels being really low, but we don't see a lack of confidence in each individual's ability to be able to engage in financial literacy in the first place. So I think what we do as a community is really target those underpinning issues that sometimes are elusive for bigger organizations. So as you mentioned earlier, the UN did declare that the 15th of July is World Skills Day. So I'm very excited to be here in the lead up to it. I think it's a really important space that's been created for us to have this discussion about how we can help young people succeed in different spaces, especially considering how much the statistics are currently not in our favor. But again, I think they are just numbers. And I think with the right collective action, with the right communal engagement as well, we can really turn it around into something that is more of a story and a journey of hope and excitement and empowerment than like, you know, just another number on a website. So yeah, I think the challenges that young people face are not really recognized very often. And I think that's also because our world at the moment is operating on in a state of disconnection and also low-key mass traumatization. We've all been through a very traumatic event. And I think that once we start to recognize that we're all dealing with really big things, it makes it a lot easier for us to hold space for other people in recognizing that they're also maybe dealing with things that are quite difficult too. Yeah, so I was supposed to change the slides. This one's supposed to be first. This is the problem / opportunity space. I just collected a few little articles that I thought I really wanted to speak about today, just because I feel like they're particularly poignant at the moment for us. So when we first started, we were so troubled to find that 1 in 3 young Australians felt problematic levels of loneliness, and that was pre-pandemic. So after the pandemic, after lockdowns, that would have increased exponentially. I think it's incredible to feel upon the idea that we've never been more connected by technology, yet so many people feel so lonely and disconnected. So it's important for us to start having a conversation around the way that we connect and how we are connecting, even on a micro level with our families and with our friends and things like that. Because I think ultimately when this change occurs, it needs to occur on an internal and a micro level before it can happen on an external level too. So this is just our way of opening up the doors of perception on an individual level first as well. So with so much happening in the world at the moment, I think there is like obviously a mass feeling of hopelessness, and also, you know, I guess, what are we going to do? What can we do about it? So what we are hoping to do, go back to my previous slide, is to build intentional communities that empower us to share knowledge, connect deeply, and grow boldly. And I think it's really just about building the infrastructures and communities that create space, that allow for young people to be able to engage with one another and then create their own things. I think that's something that I've had to learn over my journey as a leader as well, is that often it's great if I have ideas, but it's so much more valuable to allow the ideas of others to drive the ship as well. So I think that's part of being a brave leader, is knowing that your leadership is not rooted in being able to tell people to do things, but rather allowing them to really just be themselves in a space that you have opened up. And I think that's the next step of our evolution as well. So we're also a completely volunteer-based, youth-led and youth-run organisation as well, and we prioritise deep connection with each other, ourselves, and the natural environment around us. These are some of my favourite events and initiatives that we've run so far. There's a lot here, so I'm not going to go into all of them. But I think the ones that I wanted to touch on, my most favourite. So we did the Wellness Challenge last year, around about this time last year. It was a month-long challenge where people were able to sort of engage in different challenges of, you know, maybe meditating for 20 minutes a day, or going for a walk outside, or, you know, cooking themselves a nice meal during the lockdown period. And it really helped create a sense of community, even though we were far apart from each other and we couldn't see each other. And it also helped create hope within each other that, you know, there'd be something at the end of it all. So I really enjoyed that. It really helped me connect back to myself as well. And it also helped me to hear other people's journeys with themselves, in terms of growth and things like that. I've also really enjoyed our cleanups. So during the lockdown period, obviously we couldn't hold events together. So we held satellite cleanups where people got out into their local neighborhoods and just cleaned up their neighborhoods. We had some pretty interesting stories come out of it, which I'm happy to talk about after this. And we also have our regular community meetings and dinners and things like that. So these are just our events and initiatives. Our workshops are far more extensive, and they're all up on our website if you'd like to have a further look as well. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our reach and what we've been able to accomplish so far. So our workshops and programs have reached over 150 young Australians since 2020. And our mentoring program has affected around 20 young Australians since 2020. And whilst I feel that that number is not necessarily a traditional huge marker of success, for me, it feels like an incredible success, because each individual is offered tailored support, and then they go on to affect their own networks and their own communities in their own ways. And what we do in those spaces, I'm really, really proud of. We help them set goals for themselves. They engage in a mentor partnership for around 3 months to 1 year. And that really enables them space to develop a deeper connection with the person that they're engaging with. They share knowledge and skills, and they also attend our events as a partnership, create reports for themselves. It's very cool. We spent a lot of time developing our mentoring program. As we move out of the lockdown period and the pandemic period, when people are returning back to normal life and socialization, we're looking at adapting our mentoring program into something that's more accessible and flexible for the current times of busyness. And so that's called the Skillshare Network. So the Skillshare Network pretty much has the same principles of the mentoring network, but there's more of an emphasis on the idea that not everyone knows everything, but everybody knows something. And we can share that with one another in a way that's fair, fun, and accessible. So the idea is that, for example, if I knew gardening and Temre knew how to cook and I wanted to learn how to cook and Temre wants to learn how to garden, we'd meet up and we'd say 3 sessions over the course of 2 weeks or 4 weeks and exchange that skill in an informal way. And I think that's something that is really resonating with our community at the moment. This is just some feedback from one of our Wellness Challenge participants, Lauren, and our community member. She's also a mentee in our mentoring program, but she really talks about how it helped her prioritize her personal growth and her health. And I think that's something that really makes me happy, because I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. This is just a few photos from one of our monthly community meetings on the first Tuesday of every month. And also the check-ins that we do with our community members as well. It's a really good place for us to touch base with our community and to raise what we're up to, but also to hear from them about what's going on in their universes as well. I really enjoy it because it's just a bit of fun, to be honest, but it's also a really cool opportunity for us to share ideas and discuss what we're doing for the month. This is some feedback from our goal ideation workshop that we did with Canterbury Bankstown Council. This has been probably our most popular workshop in terms of external organisation support. So we've run this workshop with Canterbury Bankstown Council, but also PCYC on the Central Coast. And it really is just an opportunity for us to put young people at the centre of the map and say, what does Ness want? Or what does Maria want? And I think it's something that we don't often feel about or actually do. And for me, when I realized it, I was like, wow, we should actually do this. It's like putting yourself at the center and allowing yourself to ideate all of the possibilities for you. Like, what is it that you want? And then from there, stepping it backwards into 3-year goals, 1-year goals, 6-month goals, and 3-month goals. So things that are immediately actionable and achievable, things that are reasonable and understandable to you in that frame of mind, and then things that are the ultimate goal. We like to refer to it kind of like an umbrella as well. And last, getting to the end, is about connection to nature and self. So we more recently had one of our bushwalks where we went and did a section of the Great North Walk. We also had a few activities that got the people who attended to start thinking about how they engage in the natural environment as a part of it rather than apart from it. That's really important to me personally, because I feel like there's so many things that I'm able to integrate more broadly when I'm outside and when I'm in a natural space as well. So it's about understanding that when you are outside, you are offered so much more personal space to be able to digest and ingest information and understandings within yourself. So really creating that active custodianship of our outdoor spaces, and also understanding how important our personal well-being is linked upon the outside. It's also a really cool, I don't know, it's just for some reason easier to speak to others when you're in nature as well, like when you're walking. So it's a really cool space to open up to speaking about personal feelings and how things are going. And I really enjoy the space. Yeah. And more broadly, we just kind of exist to empower people to believe that their voices are powerful, that they can use their voice for change if they want to, and that it's not something that's inaccessible. It's something that's very, very achievable in this moment if we just open up the doors and the understandings of perception, and allow for ourselves to have that space and to take up that space, especially, I know I didn't mention too much about women's statistics, but I can get back to you on that, especially for women. I feel like it's so powerful when we do raise our voices and we do speak up and we feel empowered to be in those spaces too. So yeah, it's really, really cool to be able to do that for myself, but also for the people around me as well. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Ness. That was a joyful presentation, and I think lifted all of our spirits here at 7:30 in the morning, and was truly inspiring. Pardon me. Sorry, I'm going to lose my voice. I just wanted to say, I think you just such beautiful comments about leadership as well. I think you kind of summed it up as not telling people, but creating that space for people to be themselves. So really appreciate that. And something that I just thought I'd mention, you may like to look into this area of trauma-informed change, where you're understanding the areas in which you want to see and create change as a group, but knowing that the people in that group have experienced trauma might be something that your group could be interested in learning a little bit more about. Dr. Jen Frum writes a lot about that. If I'm saying her surname is Frahm. Yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there to you as something that could support your efforts. I'll open it up to the group for questions, and I'm sure there'll be a few. And I was curious, I heard where you were operating there on the where you are on the central northern coast. I'm just curious if you do intend to maybe go into other regional areas, and if so, seeing that you kind of started at 17, do you do high school programs?
We do. So we
Okay.
recently expanded into that space. So not regionally yet, but in terms of younger Australians. So at PCYC, we're currently working with young people who are about 14 to 17. That's with me personally because I have a working with children check. So as that happens more broadly, I think we can really look into expanding into other areas and things like that. We're currently in Sydney and the Central Coast at the moment. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to be able to look at different spaces to be able to move into, because I know that it's so needed in so many different places. But yeah, thank you for that resource as well. I've literally gotten
of course. Well, it's wonderful. I'll open it up to the group. Go ahead, Mary Jane.
I have two questions, Ness, but I have to start by saying I'm a really old person. So please, this is just where I'm coming from.
No, of course.
The first question is the definition of young people up to 27. I was shocked when you said that, because I operate from a view that a young person sort of finishes at 18 or 21, definitely, when you've left school, maybe if you've left university, I mean, in terms of the milestone stages of life. So when you said that, I was kind of gobsmacked, and I just wondered what the background is. That a huge shift since I was a young person in how people look at things?
Absolutely. I feel like it's constantly changing. It's actually something that we're also shifting our personal mindset on at the moment, because we've had quite a few older people actually engage in our organization, and that's not something that I don't want to welcome, because it's incredible to see people engaging with it and seeing the importance of engaging with young people in general. So if you have a look at our website, we recently undergone a website redesign, so it's been spruced up a little, but we've actually removed the mentions of what we consider to be a young person. I think that's also because at the moment, I feel like a lot of the challenges that are being faced traditionally by the understanding of what a young person is are also changing as well. Like, it's becoming later and later at which people are able to afford to buy their first home, for example. It's becoming later and later at which people are feeling more secure in themselves as well, because our understanding of life is changing too. So I think it's really important to adapt to how the way the world is changing, but also in a more personal sense. I'm currently 27 myself, and I was like, I kind of need to be able to be involved a little bit. When I first started it, when I was 25, and I was like, how can I include myself into this for as long as I can without it seeming odd? And then we kind of collectively came up with the agreement that 27 was a good age. I don't know why I'm 27, but yeah, it's something that I think is changing now. Like, we don't really have a limit on age, as long as the people over the age of 27 have a working with children check, and if they're engaging with people under the age of 18, then that's something that we really prioritize as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. But
Yep.
yes,
Yeah,
you can also be.
that's
I was just going to say, you can also be extremely young at heart as well, and you know, that could count too.
yeah. The framework that you talked about in your presentation could easily be applied to any age group who are wanting to make a change or to look into themselves. And I could immediately see it reframing for women at the end of their child raising years or their work changes. But that leads to my second question, which is still within the young people thing. You talked about your ideation, your goal ideation, and I, as an old person, I'm interested to know what kind of goals come out of those workshops. I don't have children. Everybody I relate to are well above your 27, so I don't have personally much opportunity for insight into younger people. So I'd be interested to know, and that's one way of knowing what kind of goals do come out of those workshops.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're absolutely interested, I'm happy to sit with you one-on-one at some point and do a goal ideation for you. It's a very fun process, but it's basically, you get a blank sheet of paper and you write, what does Mary want? And say, for example, Mary's like, I want to write a book. I have some really cool experiences and I want to put them into a book. That's on the list. An example of a 1 month goal for that would be it could be anything from research a publisher to write chapter 1, or sit down and ideate for what my book is going to be about. It's just putting in little accountability measures that ensure that you're able to sort of tick off your progress and then see where you were at point A and then see how far you've come at point B. And it's, I think it's a re-emphasis of the Kaizen approach, which is the approach that if you chip away little by little at your goals, then anything is possible, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So really, like, people set goals from like, I want to finish my university degree to I want to get diagnosed with endometriosis to, there's really no limit. There's no specific kind of goals. We see everything. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Ness, I have a question around the youth unemployment statistic. Does that count all, like, people who are not doing any work at all, or does it take into account people who are doing part-time work?
It doesn't. It really is just people classified as unemployed by the government. So it's not including people that are underutilized at work. It's not including people that are part-time. It's not including people that are in like weird work home arrangements as well. So I'm a bit, I hazard to say that like the real statistic is much more
higher.
Yeah, which is also kind of terrifying, but
And because I'm thinking, I'm like Mary Jane. I'm now classified apparently as a mature worker because I'm D1. But I'm thinking about the jobs that I had when I was 14 and 15. It was at Myer in the department store. Friday nights, Saturday mornings. It was at McDonald's. Jobs where you could walk in and you could actually do the job with other people and you could build the skills and the sort of connectivity to other human beings. And I've been thinking about what it must be like for people starting a new job in a pandemic where you don't have the same opportunities. And I'm wondering how you work with youth who might be starting new jobs but working from home and actually not get to meet their colleagues in person for quite some period of time. what is that transition like into employment when you're completely disconnected from the company culture, the human beings involved, etc.? What kind of methods do you use to help people transition into that employment in that kind of situation?
That's such a good question. It is such a good question. I feel like one of the biggest tools that we are currently implementing is our resiliency building, because I feel like socialization is such a crucial part of who we are as human beings. You know, like this engagement, even though it's through a computer, is still very important, but it doesn't really match face-to-face engagement because you can't really read body cues. There are people who are neurodiverse who might not be able to understand the same social understandings through a computer as they can in person as well. So it's so interesting to be able to mediate between the different understandings of how engaging in work is. And we're seeing so many people who are doing both, starting new jobs in person in like retail and things like that, but also starting new jobs from home as well. And the difference is that they do get that human interaction. The people who are starting those new jobs in person, it's about fostering the interaction aspect and being like, how can I interact in a way that is me being myself, but also respectful? And then how do I engage on a work perspective if I'm working from home in a way that fosters connection? So for us, we're very lucky because we started during the pandemic. And so we had to kind of get really creative in order to stay running. We came up with really cool ideas like watching movies from home or doing dinner and discusses where we'd like present things and come up with interesting ways to get connected with one another. Sometimes that's games as well. So I think it's about creating avenues for people to get creative about how they engage socially with one another in those spaces, but also giving grant to like some also pretty interesting experiences that we've had recently of like young people. One of our community members recently just started a job at a petrol station, and I think that's something that's really like, it's kind of like, not that it's difficult, but it's something that is very new. And I think because there aren't a lot of other options at the moment, it's kind of young people are put in this position where they're kind of just going to take what they can get at the moment. And I think what we do is provide them a basis to be able to build an understanding that they're worthy and deserving of anything that they want. They just need to put their mind to it and work towards their goals. And whether or not that's a stepping stone into something that's greater, it's just, I think, you know, a broader understanding that we're coming to as a human collective as well, is that work is changing for us. Life is changing for us. There is no way that we're going to be able to come out of this pandemic the same. And the norm of how things were isn't going to hold up with the current way that things are going. So I find it will be very interesting to see how everything will shake out in the next couple of years. I think give it 5 to 10 years and the world will look very, very different to what it does today. And I believe it's for the better. Yeah, I think it will be.
Thanks, Ness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn or Maria, do you have any questions for Ness?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Tamara. I'll just put one in there. I was really interested. You had your because I know I did When Strong Women Talk with you as a podcast, and that was an experience that was different, but also really enlightening. But also you have your boundaries and respects workshop, because you actually have young people in that, and you get some pretty interesting feedback from, you know, both genders. What has been your biggest takeaway from the, setting boundaries workshop that you did with the council and PCYC?
My biggest takeaway is that literally nobody knows how to do it. And that's myself included. When I first started putting it together, I was like, wow, I'm actually going to have to be brave and start setting boundaries in my own life with situations that make me feel uncomfortable. And I think it's probably easier for men to set boundaries because they feel more comfortable speaking from a personal experience about how they feel in certain situations. But then it's also easier for women to speak about how they feel in general. So I think it's about finding a happy medium between the both of being vocal, but also being very vocal about your feelings. And then, balancing them both. Because one thing that I tend to do when I'm speaking is I tend to get a little bit like, like overwhelmed. And I'm like, oh, if I'm setting boundaries, am I being cruel? No, I'm just being kind to myself. And I think there's a lot of young people that are like, as a joke, this is funny, but they're like, oh, I'm entering my villain era, which is the idea that you're becoming a villain. And it's like, no, actually, you're just setting healthy boundaries and learning how to communicate in a way that respects you. And I think that's interesting to view as a bit of a window into what we're facing at the moment as well, is that like the understanding that you can't actually speak up about what it is that you need or want in a particular situation. And I think dispelling that is just about providing the language and the tools to be able to do so. So when you do X, I feel X, and if we could not do X in the future, I would really appreciate that. Like, I'm getting so much better at it, but it's just through practice. People, I think, mistake the value of practice sometimes. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ness.
Ness, I've just got a question, which is probably more selfishly, because I've got a couple of nieces that, when you were speaking, that I think would really benefit from the community that you've created, which congratulations on. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, and really necessary with my exposure to the youth through my family. But selfishly, they're in another state. So I was just wondering if there's anything similar that you've come across in other states, and did you work on this completely from scratch, or you had some inspiration from other organisations and you've taken it and adapted it? So it's a two-part question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I'll answer your second question first. I think no, we looked up online. We went online and I was like, youth mentoring. I looked it up on Google. Nothing. And I was like, what? Like, how is no one doing anything about this? And then I was like, you know what, we should do something about it. So that's why we started it, and we started completely from scratch. It was literally like us 4 people around a dining table and a Google Doc, shared between the 4 of us on our laptops, and we just wrote out all of the things that we would want in an organization that supported young people for mentoring and things like that. So I haven't noticed any in particular in other states that do exactly what we do, because I think what we're doing is very, very unique. But I do know of other youth organizations that I've personally been in contact with in other states as well. So we do.
Is Headspace one of them?
Headspace is okay. I'm gonna be honest. Headspace is a lot of lip service and not a lot of action. It's kind of difficult for young people to access sometimes, because sometimes their opening hours are inaccessible as well. So there's a lot of logistical issues within that space too, and they get a lot of funding. So they're like, for the amount of funding that they get, they should be a lot more effective than they are. But I think their focus predominantly is more on a research basis, which is good. It provides a basis for other organizations to be able to do the work that they do. But I think when it comes to serving the community that they're needing to serve, there's a little bit lacking there. I can actually put you, if you tell me what state it is, I can put you in touch with a few organizations. Otherwise, they're more than welcome to join by a distance. We do have people who operate within our community who are in Europe, who are in South Australia as well.
Oh,
so
great.
Very
it's Victoria, maybe offline.
Yeah, it's very accessible for different things. But I'll drop my email in the chat, and maybe we can take this one offline.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, can I just follow that one up then? Because another question I had is, how do people find you?
Yeah, I will drop our website in the chat as well. It's www.YEmpower.com.au. And you can get in touch with us through the website or the email that I just dropped above.
So your part of your model is, here we are. If people are googling for some kind of help or connection, they're going to find your website.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is through word of mouth as well. Okay. So like, we affect one person's life in a meaningful way, and they tell their friends about it, and then someone's like, oh, I want that too, I need that. And that's how we grow. Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay,
it's
right.
kind of like a really heartful kind of growth too, because it's not like we're actively like recruiting people. People are finding us, and that's yeah, I think that's the part that makes me excited about it.
Yeah,
And
wonderful.
yeah,
It's so great to hear about all that you're doing and the growth that you've had at YEmpower, and it's lovely to get to know you a bit more on a personal level too, Ness. So thank you so much for sharing and for your presentation this morning.
Thank
We
you so
really
much for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Of course. So we'll just transition into